In previous class of this module, we have discussed various types of looping statements available in VB.NET. In today's class, let us design two applications which make use of for loop statement. So the first application is to calculate sum of n numbers. This is the form we need to design for this application, wherein we have one text box to enter the value of n, and it displays sum of first n numbers when user clicks on sum. So when the input value given is 5, it calculates the sum of first 5 numbers, and that will be 15. So the code required for this is, we have taken two variables, n for the input value and sum, to store the sum of n numbers, that is the output. Data type we have selected is integer. N is equal to value of textbox1.text, that is the value entered in the first text box will be stored into n. Sum is initialized to 0. Then we have the for loop here. For I is equal to the starting value of I is 1 and end value is n. If the input is 5, I value will be initialized to 1 and it will be up to 5. As step value is not mentioned, I value will be incremented by 1 every time. Sum is equal to sum plus I, which is used to calculate the sum of n numbers. Next I, and after coming out of the loop, sum which is calculated will be displayed in the second text box. So the statement textbox2.text is equal to sum. Let us understand how this program works. If n is equal to 5, I is initialized to 1 first, some value is initialized to 0 initially. So here when I is equal to 1, it enters the loop where we have the statement sum is equal to sum plus I. Initial value of sum is 0 and I value is 1. So it calculates sum, that is 0 plus I is 1, 0 plus 1, and it will be stored back into the variable sum. So 0 plus 1 equal to 1. Next I will increment the value of I by 1. It becomes 2. 2 is less than 5. It executes sum is equal to sum plus I. Now the sum value has become is 1 and the I value is 2. So it calculates 1 plus 2, that is 3, which will be stored in sum. Next I is going to increment the value of I by 1 again. 3 has not reached 5, so it calculates sum is equal to sum plus I, that is 3 plus 3 is 6. I value is incremented, it becomes 4. Sum is 6, so 6 plus 4 is 10. I value is 5. 5, here sum value is 10, I value is 5, so 10 plus 5 is equal to 15. That is the last step. It has reached the end value, so it will not continue. It will come out of this loop and the output of this program will be 15. Sum is equal to 15, which will be stored into the text box. This is how this program works. Let us take another example, that is design an application to find factorial of a given number. This is the form we require for this application. where in the first text box user will enter the value of n. When user clicks on this button, it shows the factorial of that number. So if the input is 5, the output should be 120. The code required for this program is here. In the first statement, we have declared two variables n and I as integer. We require one variable to store the factorial value, that is fact. The data type we have selected for fact is long. Fact is initialized to 1. N is equal to value of textbox1.text. It will store the value of n, which is entered in the first text box, into the variable n. If n is less than 0, then that means if user enters negative value, it has to display invalid input. So we have checked this condition. If n less than 0, textbox2.text is equal to invalid input. If the input given by the user is 0 or 1, then it should display the factorial as 1. So here we have checked the condition, else if n is equal to 0 or n is equal to 1, then output must be 1. So textbox2.text is equal to 1. Else, if the value entered by the user is some positive number, then these are the statements used to calculate the factorial. That is, if positive number is entered, to calculate the factorial, we multiply first n values. In case of n is equal to 5, it has to calculate the factorial as 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5. So that will be done by using this for loop. For I is equal to 1, it starts from 1 up to n. Fact is equal to fact into I and next I. After calculating the factorial for the positive value, the final output is displayed in the second text box. So we have the statement here, textbox2.text is equal to fact. So let us understand how this program works for the value n equal to 5. First, I is initialized to 1. It comes here in the loop where we have the statement fact is equal to fact into I. The value we have initialized to fact is 1 and the I value is also 1. So it calculates 1 into 1 and it will be stored back into the variable fact. Next statement we have here is next I, which is going to increment the value of I by 1. So I becomes 2. 2 has not reached 5. So the loop will continue. It executes fact is equal to fact into I. The fact value we have calculated in the previous step is 1. So it calculates 1 into 2. That is 2, which is stored into the factorial variable. Next I becomes 3. It calculates 2 into 3, that is 6. Next I becomes 4. 6 into 4, that is 24, which is stored in factorial. Next I becomes 5. It calculates 24 into 5, that is 120. Once I reaches 6, it terminates the loop. It comes out of the loop where we have the statement textbox2.text is equal to fact. So the final value which we have got in the factorial is 120, which will be stored, which will be displayed in the second text box. So the final answer is 120. This is how we can calculate factorial by using for statement. Now let us switch to Visual Studio and see how these programs are executed. So this is the form which we have designed to calculate sum of n numbers. In previous video of sequential programs, how the interface is designed in VB.NET is explained. You can watch those videos to learn how the interface is designed in VB.NET. So this is the form required for calculating sum of n numbers. We have two text boxes. In first text box, user will enter the input value. When user clicks on sum of n numbers will be calculated and it will be displayed in the second text box. To write the code, double click and add the required code into the button once procedure. So once the coding part is done, we need to go to project, select com5 properties, and here the startup form should be selected as sum of n. Once this property is changed, click on Start Debugging. It displays the form of sum of n numbers. If the input entered by the user is 5, sum of first 5 numbers, that is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, will be displayed in the second text box. Now let us see the factorial program. This is the form we have designed to calculate factorial of the given number. Input value is entered here. When user clicks on this button, the factorial of n will be displayed. Double click on the button to write the code for that button. This is the code required to calculate the factorial. And button 2 is nothing but it is exit button. When user clicks on button 2, the application should be closed, it should be terminated. So that can be done with the help of the statement end. Let us execute this application. For that, first change the startup form by going to com5 properties. Change the startup form to fact. Click on Start Debugging. It opens the interface for the factorial program wherein the required value can be entered. If user enters some negative value, it displays invalid input. If the input given by the user is 0, it shows the factorial of 0, that is 1. If user enters 5, the factorial will be 120. This is how factorial will be calculated. When user clicks on exit button, the application terminates. So some more programs on looping will be covered in the next class.